Hey there everyone, welcome to Tales in Text and I'm your host Nisha and welcome to another book review. So today's book is a really special book by an author that I really love and whose work I have enjoyed over the years in both English and Kannada. And that author is S.L.Bhyrappa, and the book that I'm going to be talking about today is Uttara Kanda by S.L.Bhyrappa. Now, for those of you who don't know who S.L. Bhyrappa is, I'm just going to read out a short biography of the author given here. S.L. Bhyrappa is one of modern India's most distinguished novelists, and he has written in Kannada for over 60 plus years. A formidable scholar of philosophy, history, and mythology, S.L. Bhyrappa has published over 25 novels, and these novels written in Kannada have been translated into several languages, including English and many other Indian languages, such as Sanskrit, Hindi, and so on. He does extensive research. In fact, one of the things that I really admire about this author, may he rest in peace, is that he used to go to the places that he used to write about, stay there for months on end, immerse himself into the culture, and then learn a lot about the landscape and then write about them, then include them in his books. S.L. Bhyrappa has won numerous awards over his very distinguished career, such as the Sahitya Academy Award, the Karnataka Sahitya Academy Award, the Pampa Award by the government of Karnataka, for many of his incredible works of literature, such as Avarna, Mandara, Parva, which is about the Mahabharata, Jalpana, Gruhabanga, Dhatu. There are so many books that I can mention, but these are just some of his really incredible works. And Uttara Kanda happened to be his very last book that he published before he passed away. A huge loss for our country, for our nation, because we lost such an incredible writer. But I want to take some time to talk about this lovely book, and I do hope you get your hands on this book as well. So this book, Uttara Kanda, the name itself suggests, and as you can see over here, the cover is a retelling of the Ramayana. The Uttara Kanda itself is one of the kandas of the Ramayana, and yes, I know there is a lot of debate about whether the Uttara Kanda is a part of the original Ramayana or not, but I am someone who has read the Baroda Research Institute's critical edition of the Ramayana, and it is given in the starting sections of that critical edition of the Ramayana that the Uttara Kanda is a part of the original Ramayana. So while I respect everyone's belief about whatever beliefs they hold, whether Uttara Kanda is a part of the Ramayana or not, I personally have read in the critical edition of the Ramayana that the Uttara Kanda is a part of the original Ramayana. So according to me, I do accept this, and the incidents of Uttara Kanda, which are quite controversial even today, to be a part of the original Ramayana, telling the encapsulation, the story of Shri Rama, Devi Sita, Lakshmana, and everybody else. So Uttara Kanda by S.L. Bhyrappa is actually a retelling of the Ramayana told from the lens of Devi Sita. And one of the most interesting aspects about this book is that the Uttara Kanda actually strips away the divinity, the Maya, the magic of the Ramayana. And it doesn't do so in a disrespectful way, mind you. It does it in a very sensitive way. But the key component of the way the Uttara Kanda by S.L. Bhyrappa is written is that it looks at Ramayana in a very practical and grounded way. And what I mean is, for example, there is an incident of Devi Sita going into the fire, or wanting to go into the fire, when after the battle in Lanka, when Sri Rama says, I don't want to take you back because I don't know what has happened in Ravana's kingdom, and as a king I need to exercise some discretion because I am the upholder of dharma. And so Devi Sita says, I want to prove my fidelity to you, I want to prove my loyalty to you, and to show you that I have not done anything wrong, that no one has harmed me, no one has touched me, so I will go into the sacred fire. And as you know, Agni protects all people who have not committed any sins, and Agni allows those people to enter the fire unhurt and unburnt. And she enters the fire. This is in the popular retellings, the popular Ramayana story, Devi Sita enters the fire and she comes out unscathed, right? She's not hurt, she's not burnt. Very interestingly, in S.L. Bhyrappa's Uttara Kanda, the same story, the same episode is actually handled in a much more grounded and practical and believable way. And the reason I say believable is that today, if you were to walk through fire, you would be burnt. If I were to walk through anything like fire, then I would also be burnt, right? So the reality is that fire burns, and this concept of fire protect, or rather showcasing the morality of someone, is something very hard to believe, because all of us know that touching fire burns us. So in this Uttara Kanda by S.L. Bhyrappa, Bhyrappa has changed the narrative in the sense that he has reframed it. When Sita Devi goes to walk into the fire to prove her chastity, instead of making her go through the fire, S.L. Bhyrappa has used the character of Lakshmana as a person to stop Sita Devi from entering into the fire and protecting her by ensuring that she doesn't burn. In fact, Lakshmana becomes the person who proves her chastity by talking to Sri Rama, by talking to his brother and explaining to him about how he cannot doubt his wife's loyalty, his wife's fidelity, and how he needs to empathize with her position as a woman who was abducted against her will, and he brings the couple together. So in a lot of ways, Lakshmana's passionate belief in the innocence of Sita, passionate belief in the cause for looking for Sita and the war being a way to protect his family, that passion, that fire, the fire of his beliefs, acts as the Agni, or symbolically, metaphorically, the Agni that allows Sita and Rama to come back together, and then the whole Agnipariksha, the Agnipravesham, as some people also call it, that whole episode is handled in such a practical manner. So this is just one example of the many examples that many ways in which S.L. Bhyrappa has reframed the Ramayana and retold the Ramayana from a very practical and grounded setting. And that is one of the things that I absolutely loved about this book. And in fact, that is also why I believe Uttara Kanda by S.L. Bhyrappa is also the best retelling of the Ramayana, because every single thing in the Ramayana is explored in such a believable way. And the reason I'm using the word believable, although I know it's very dangerous to use this word, especially when anyone is talking about the Ramayana, is that, like I said, the Agnipravesham, Agnipariksha, however, whichever word you want to use, although they mean two separate things, I'm just kind of using them in the same line here. When you're using these terms, we envision someone entering the fire, quite literally entering the fire and coming out of it unscathed. But that cannot happen in reality, because fire does burn, fire does singe. So the example I gave you, S.L. Bhyrappa has reframed it into a more believable narrative of what may have happened. Similarly, for example, the character or the person of Hanuman. Shri Hanuman is also considered a deity in our religion, and he is one of my favorite deities as well, apart from Lord Ganpati. But in the book, Hanuman, Sugriva, and the entire Kishkinda army are not considered Vanaras, that is, they are not considered monkeys or bears or any other non-human creature. Rather, they are considered a different community or clan who happens to belong to a region, a geographical region, and a community and a culture that is different from the one that Sri Rama, Sita Devi, and Lakshmana come from. So they are older people. They happen to have a lot more body hair than Sri Rama and his community. They happen to look slightly differently from Sri Rama, Sita Devi, and all of the others, but they are inherently human. They are people, they are humans. Right? Similarly, for the Rakshasas as well, the Rakshasas, that is Ravana, Vibhishana, Kumbhakarna, Shurpanakha, and the entire Rakshasa army in Lanka, they are not considered as demons or monsters. Rather, they are considered as people who have a very different and distinct belief system, a different and distinct dharma. Therefore, the way they operate is very different from how Sri Rama and Sita and everybody else operates, because they come from a different country, their practices are different. And in fact, that is very leaned into very heavily, because Lanka is a different country, a different nation, a different geographical entity that is isolated because of its position within the ocean, right, surrounded by the ocean. They are very insulated, you could say, and isolated, and therefore their dharmic beliefs, the way they follow, the kind of life that they lead, the rules that they follow, what is considered right and wrong, is very different from the mainland, from where Sri Rama and Sita Devi and Lakshmana, even the Kishkinda army, hail from. And therefore you see a lot more similarity from the people from Kosala and the people from Kishkinda, rather than you see between the people from, Bharata and when I say Bharata, I just mean Kosala, Kishkinda, and the entire mainland India compared to that of the people in Lanka. So you see a lot of very, very realistic portrayals here. Even the character of Sita Devi is made so much more, I would say, cognizant of the realities of her life, that she accepts what has happened to her, and she doesn't give in to that typical expectation of a pativrata, you could say, right? She loves her husband, she respects her husband, even after, like the name says, this is Uttara Kanda. So a majority chunk of this book, in fact the entire length of this book, the way this book starts, is after Sita has been abandoned at Rishi Valmiki's ashrama. And in spite of all of these things, she does love her husband, she does respect her husband, but she's not willing to put up with anything anymore. She's not willing to put up with his caprices, with his mood swings, with his changing beliefs, with his sudden realization that now Sita cannot harm me because I have two grown-up sons and I need someone as an heir. She's not willing to put up with all of those. And for a lot of people I know who see, I love the Ramayana, right? And I know that for a lot of people who also love the Ramayana, it can be very hard to accept that the stories of the Uttara Kanda, it can be very hard and very difficult to accept that at the end of their marriage, Sri Rama and Sita Devi were estranged, to say the least, that their relationship was anything but cordial. While they did not actively seek to hurt each other or anything, they were not on speaking terms. And Sita Devi chose to put herself and her self-respect and her dignity above the needs of the Kosala kingdom and above the needs of what is considered right for a pativrata. And so you can see, in a lot of ways, this is a very feminist book as well. And I use this word in a very in a very positive way, because the word feminism has been taken out of context, and just people talk a lot of negative things about it. There is a lot of flack about it, but I want to talk about feminism in a very positive way. S.L.Bhyrappa himself acts as an ally here. He is an ally because he really champions Sita Devi as a person, as a character, and he champions her ideology and her stance, in the sense that he helps us really understand and sympathize with the nuances of what she went through. Now, I know there are a lot of other books on, where, for example, Chitra Banerjee Devakaruni's Forest of Enchantment, for example. You have so many other books on Ravana, on Rama, on so many other retellings online. And yet they still sort of try to keep to the mainstream narrative of the Ramayana, while trying to be a little different in the way they retell the story. But S.L.Bhyrappa really reinvents the wheel here. He takes a story that is as old as time, that is timeless, and that is still so relevant to us today, and he shares it with us in a way that is so relatable. If the Ramayana, if Sri Rama, Sita Devi, Ravana were all there today, this book would be, you could say, an account, or a journalistic, as close to a journalistic account to what might realistically happen. And one of the reasons for that is S.L.Bhyrappa treats all of his characters not as divine, but as human. The essence here is, this is a family where people are trying to transcend their human frailties. They're trying to transcend the restrictions of their humanity. But they're also burdened by their very humanity. For example, Sri Rama wants to be the upholder of Dharma. The whole point of Rama Rajya is that no one can raise a finger again across at Sri Rama and say that, hey, you did this wrong, so who are you to tell me what I can do or I can't do? The point is, Sri Rama wanted to do everything right according to the Vedas, according to what the rishis used to say, so that he can dispense justice, right? And in a way, he's trying to transcend or go beyond his human needs, his human heart. One can only imagine what he may have felt when he abandoned Sita after going through everything. But he did that because he felt that as a king, I must be expected to make sacrifices that are greater and that are more, I would say, that are of a higher magnitude than a normal person, because my role in society is so complex, is so larger than life. Yet, they are burdened by their own guilt. They're burdened by their own insecurities. They're burdened by their own doubts. Right? And while Sri Rama chooses his public persona over his private life, Sita Devi chooses her private, personal empowerment over her public persona. And I think in some ways, while initially Sita Devi tries to do her best to support her husband in his endeavor to make all of them transcend these human restrictions, these human boundaries, these human frailties, Sita Devi realizes in the end that that in an attempt or in an effort to do right by everybody else, we can't end up doing wrong towards ourselves. Because when we are very unhappy, we cannot possibly make others happy. And so she chooses her peace of mind, she chooses her self-dignity, her self-respect. And through that, she gains true peace, while one can only wonder what Sri Rama felt in his empty palace without his wife and without his children. Interestingly, S.L.Bhyrappa also showcases the complex consequences of the decisions that Sri Rama takes on the rest of his family. So the mainstream narrative makes it seem as if Lakshmana, for example, is just blindly following everything Sri Rama asks of him and just accepting any decision that Sri Rama makes. So the only time we see Lakshmana disagreeing with Rama or in a way not following Rama's instructions in the mainstream Ramayana is at the very end, which is when he disobeys Rama's instruction that nobody must be let in when he's in conversation with somebody important. But Lakshmana does do that because he's worried about something much greater. And in the end, Rama ends up punishing him and ordering his death by drowning in the Sarayu. And Rama is not able to take this, and therefore the death of his brother after the loss of his wife, that he ends up going and giving up his life as well. That is the mainstream Ramayana. But we see in the Uttara Kanda how Lakshmana has a mind of his own. He has a spine of his own. Initially, just like Sita Devi, he does go along with Sri Rama. He does follow all of the rules. He does do whatever his brother wants. But increasingly, as he begins to see the impact of Rama's public role as king, his professional role as king, and the kind of decisions that it leads him to take, and the kind of negative impact his role as king and his very, very extreme views on what kingship should look like, Lakshmana begins to strengthen his own spine, and Lakshmana begins to stand up against his brother, stand up to his brother. And he chooses to make his own way in the world because he finally realizes that his home life is no longer stable, his home life is no longer safe, because a brother who could turn around and banish his wife at the blink of an eye because some stranger made a passing comment about her, the same brother may not be trusted enough to keep him safe. right? And in fact, and even in the mainstream Ramayana, you do see something similar like that happening, like I mentioned, about how Lakshmana dies, right? And it does come to pass. Lakshmana's fears do come to pass ultimately in terms of how Rama chooses his public duty as a king over protecting his brother. And I think in S.L. Bhyrappa's book, Bhyrappa himself has realized very early on that the real Lakshmana, because Lakshmana is supposed to be very strong, he's supposed to be short tempered, yes, but he's also supposed to have a nerve of steel. And the only reason he doesn't question Rama initially is because he loves his brother and he wants his brother to be happy. And because he genuinely believes in his brother's vision of Ramarajya. But when he begins to see what Ramarajya actually looks like, Lakshmana also begins to start standing up to his brother. So you see a very realistic portrayal of a family that starts out with the good intention, with the greatest of intentions perhaps, but then slowly starts crumbling because they are unable to unburden themselves of their human frailties, and therefore it is their very own humanity which they are trying to transcend and trying to overcome. That is the same humanity that ultimately cannot be shaken off. That is the same humanity which they're trying to escape because they want to be something better, something beyond the human emotions, and therefore someone who can take decisions in a very practical way. Yet these decisions happen to be the most impractical decisions because at their core they're still people. Divinity should be left to divine things, right? And humanity should be left to humans. And in an attempt to not be human or to not appear to fall for their human emotions, their human caprices, human challenges, Sri Rama puts himself into a position where that same humanity becomes the one shackle that he just can't get rid of. And in that way, you see this book is just so profound because it's so human, it's very realistic, it's relatable, it's believable, and it's tragic. If anyone were to tell me that the Ramayana is a tale of victory over good and evil, maybe as a child I would have believed them. But as an adult, I can't believe that. After reading so many retellings, after reading the critical edition, and after reading Uttara Kanda, I can only say that the Ramayana is a tale of loss. It is a tale of sorrow. It is a tale of vulnerabilities. It is a tale of rushed judgments. It is a tale of intense self-criticism. And it is a tale of people trying so hard to desperately be beyond human that they cannot see that their own humanity, because it is not being expressed, because it is not being given an opportunity or a path to be expressed, that very humanity is acting like the stone that is pulling them down and drowning them in life's sorrows. I loved Uttara Kanda, and I do hope people pick this up. This book, like I said, is published by Subbu Publications. If you can read Kannada, do pick it up in Kannada, because the original language often always has a lot more depth and nuance and sensitivity, because English is still very limited. So if you can read Kannada, do pick up S.L. Bhyrappa's books in Kannada. But if you can't read Kannada, do pick this up in English. I love Bhyrappa's work. His loss has been a tremendous loss for the nation. So if you want to start with a very accessible and easy book, I would say go in for this. The book was translated by Rashmi Terdal, a Bengaluru-based media professional who has worked with the Times of India and Deccan Herald. And she has also won the Karnataka Sahitya Academy Book Prize and Kuvempu Bhasha Bharati Award for her English translation of a book called Mohanaswamy by Kannada writer Vasudendra. So we do have a very eminent translator as well who has done justice to this book. So do go pick it up. It's a it's a it's a reasonably sized book of 350 pages in length. So I think you should definitely pick this up and give this a try. So if you've read this book, Uttara Kanda by S.L.Bhyrappa, do let me know in the comments what you think of it. Have you read any of his other books, or are you planning to read? Or is there any other Ramayana retelling that you really enjoy? Do let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So if you stuck around with me so far, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time on Tales in Text. Bye bye.